viewers joining us on Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube. I welcome all our panelists and participants as well. In particular, I extend warm welcome to Dr. Lorraine Vernal, the Director of Women's, Children, and Adolescent Ministries at Jamaica Union Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. Mrs. Jean Doheny, Regional Manager for the Child Protection and Family Service Agencies in St. Catherine, who will both be listening in on Zoom, along with 13 students in the discipline of social work from the Jamaica Theological Seminary. These students are joining us for this webinar as part of their program requirement. Due to the nature of our discussion, we will not have our doctrinal focus this evening, as we desire to allot as much time as possible to this discourse. Today, we will be discussing sexual abuse of males and females, which they experience at different stages of their lives: childhood, adolescence, teenagers, and adulthood. We have as moderator Elder Christopher Thomas of the Kitson Seventh-day Adventist Church. Elder Thomas is an experienced social worker. Please feel free to send in your questions and comments in the webinar and on Facebook and YouTube. At all times, we will show respect for each other's view, even if we differ. I am your host, Michael Spence. And just before Elder Thomas takes charge, we will have special music by Mr. Lawrence Subter and Dr. Heather Edwards from the Belvedere Seventh-day Adventist Church. Amen. Thank you so much, gentleman and lady. Over to you now, Mr. Moderator.
All right, thank you very much, Brother Spence. And that special was indeed special. So we give thanks to Mr. Lawrence Sumter, the organist, and Dr. Heather Edwards, pianist from the Belvedere Seventh-day Adventist Church, for that lovely rendition. And indeed, it was very heartwarming. And I must say, Brother Spence, you just made mention that this will be the final presentation for this season. I must give you my commendations to you and the team, because indeed you were one of the first out of the block during this COVID-19 season. And your programming offered a lifeline to the church when there was nothing but gloom and doom, and you offered some light and a lifeline. So commendations, Sir Spence. And today we have a very interesting topic. It's a sensitive topic, but it's also a hot topic, because this topic has made the news recently. I'll get into that a little later. But before I do that, I would like to introduce my esteemed panel. And indeed, we have a very qualified panel this afternoon to discuss the topic, sexual abuse. We begin with the first panelist, lovely lady, Dr. Laninia Mom Premier. I hope that I got that name correct. Dr. Mom Premier is passionate about reducing stigma and equipping people to improve their mental health. As an adolescent, Laninia could recognize the mental health issues her friends and family members struggled to overcome. In college at Georgia State University, she fell in love with psychology, as it offered an explanation for things she had experienced and a way for people to find healing. In 2000, after graduation, she worked at Grady Memorial Hospital in their inpatient psychiatry unit, providing psychoeducational groups and supportive therapy for Grady's patients. Upon learning of the dearth of mental health providers skilled in serving deaf, hard of hearing persons, and other minority communities, she made a commitment to providing culturally appropriate treatment to minorities. This commitment led to the pursuit of graduate studies in clinical psychology and proficiency in American Sign Language. During her graduate training, she worked or interned in various state psychiatric hospitals and community mental health agencies. After earning her doctorate, Dr. Montpremier served as the coordinator of training at a university counseling center. There she trained junior therapists and worked with young adults struggling with depression, anxiety, trauma, identity development, and a host of other issues. Currently, Dr. Montpremier is the founder and operator of a private online psychotherapy practice, Creating Sustaining Joy. That's the name of the company. She is licensed to offer psychotherapy services to residents of Georgia, Virginia, Maryland, and Washington, D.C. Her training allows her to offer online services to clients in sign language as well as spoken English. All right. Next, we have Mrs. Tashian Burgess Smith, and she's a professional counselor at the Women's Center Foundation of Jamaica. Next, we have Dr. Gary Badu Fletcher, is a chaplain, assistant commissioner in charge of the JCF chaplaincy unit. And also we have Deputy Superintendent of Police, Ms. Samantha Smith, and she will be representing the Center for the Investigation of Sexual Offenses and Child Abuse. And in our midst, we have two very special persons. And these persons, they represent victims of sexual crimes or sexual abuse. We have with us a very brave person. She is going to be speaking on the ordeal that she underwent. But to protect her identity, we have given her a pseudonym. She'll now go by the name of Andreen. And we also have with us Letitia Parks. And Ms. Parks is, at this point in time, you know, it's a very interesting time in her life because she's about to release a book on her ordeal. So these two persons will be sharing with us testimonials of their ordeal with sex abuse. And we look forward to hearing from them. But right now, I said that sex abuse is a very hot topic in Jamaica. Just the other day, maybe last week, the Pediatric Association of Jamaica reported that there was a 70% increase in cases of child sex abuse in Jamaica since the onset of COVID-19. Now that statistics, it has been refuted by the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, which says that, you know, their figures, their stats aren't so high. As a matter of fact, they're saying that in some parishes, they have seen a reduction. However, the point that the Pediatrics Association was trying to bring out is that usually during times of crisis such as these, there's usually a spike in the cases of sex abuse. So today, we're going to be ventilating this topic. We know that a lot of persons in our churches, children and adults alike, are suffering because of what they would have experienced because of sexual abuse. So we are going to be just laying the foundation a little bit, and we're going to be starting with Dr. Laninia Mompremier, and we're going to be asking Dr. Mompremier some questions just so that our viewing audience will have a full understanding of what we're talking about. And I must, you know, say greetings. I forgot to do so earlier to all our visitors, all of our viewers, using the Zoom platform, the various platforms on YouTube, Facebook. I greet you, and I invite Dr. Mompremier. No, Dr. Mompremier?
Yes, thank you.
All right, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. It's an honor to be here, and hello to everyone on the various platforms.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you, Doctor. But we'd like you to enlighten us a little bit. What is sexual abuse?
Good. So sexual abuse is any inappropriate sexual behavior with a child. And so we see that sometimes we're talking about sexual abuse versus sexual assault. Sexual assault here in the United States, as far as the medical or a legal term, is more geared towards adults, inappropriate, unwanted touching of adults, and sexual abuse we classify as more for inappropriate sexual behavior with a child.
All right, thank you, Dr. Mompremier. Is there any difference though in terms of duration, like sexual abuse? I know that you said that in the US it's classified, sexual abuse is classified as something that happens to children and assault happens to adults. But does the duration of whatever takes place, does that have anything to do to differentiate which is abuse and which is assault?
No, not specifically, because one label is for children and one label is for adults. We do see that there are some children who only experience one instance, thank the Lord. And then there are children who've had repeated instances of sexual abuse over the course of years, months, weeks. And so we do see a difference in some of the patterns of symptoms that come from those two instances of timeline, as far as I could say.
Right.
But yeah, you would use the same terms.
Okay. All right. So who are the usual perpetrators of sexual abuse? And who are the usual victims?
So usual victims are usually female, female children under the age of 20, under the age of 5 is around 20% of kids under the age are targeted. And then we have the largest percentage of children that are targeted are between 5 and 12. And that's 50% of children who are targeted are in that age group. And then the next age group would be 13 to 17 years of age, and those children are targeted. And so you see that between the age of 5 and 12 is where the largest group of children are targeted. And you already shared the numbers there in Jamaica and the Caribbean. And we see that 90% of children, adults who are abused, who are assaulted, who have some inappropriate sexual touching and such, 90% of the children are abused by someone that they know.
Right.
And then we have a third of them that are abused by a peer. So that means, for instance, let's say a young child is touched by an adult inappropriately. They learn the behavior, and as they grow older, they start acting out the behavior on a younger child. And so you have a teenager or a preteen who's now touching a younger child because that child was touched inappropriately when they were a child, and they haven't learned corrective behavior since then. And so a third of children who are abused are abused by other children who've had some sort of exposure to inappropriate sexual behavior. And so,
Wow.
yeah.
That is amazing. That's right there, up to a third.
Yes.
Oh, and we can see where the trust factor comes in, because people that the children know well, family members and close family associates, they would have access to the children. Therefore,
Exactly.
that's probably why they are the most prominently featured when it comes to those who abuse the children.
Yeah, so offenders often take the role of people who work with children, who are in child care roles, whether it be a coach, whether it be a child care worker or some sort of teacher, tutor, those sorts of things. Someone who is helping out the family, just watching the child because mom has to work or dad's here or dad's there, and so these are people that are trusted. Oftentimes, 50% of the victims are under the age of 6. You know, a child under the age of 6, I'm not really letting them go out and interact with a lot of people that I don't know. So the children under the age of 6 are often abused by a family member.
Oh, okay, right, and that's usually a very serious betrayal of
Exactly.
trust, there.
Exactly. At a
So lifelong
developmental,
trust issues.
exactly, and that's at a developmental stage where trust is developing, and so you find that you have inappropriate trust developing after abuse.
Okay. But some psychologists say that sexual abuse is more about power and dominance than about sex. Is there a psychological underpinning to sexual abuse?
Yeah, there's a huge piece of the power uh, that is involved. So for the offender, for the person who's committing the crime, who's touching the person inappropriately, whether it be abuse or whether it be assault, they're in, especially in assault, they're interested in conquest, to conquer that person's body, to take possession. Oftentimes we see they struggle with self-image themselves. And so their self-image is fed by dominating someone else.
Right.
And oftentimes we see that, they feel more in control because they're ordaining the time and the place. They feel invincible because they've convinced these children not to tell. And so they're abused without consequences. They don't have to face consequences because they've been able to really instill terror into their abuse, the people that they've abused, the child or the person who's being assaulted. They've been able to instill some terror in them when it's an ongoing situation. And so oftentimes folks don't want to tell. They end up protecting their abusers because these are folks who really are masters of deceit, intelligent, charismatic, talented, but really very able to convince people to trust them and convince the children that, that they might have caused the situation or they'll get in trouble for telling. And so there's that huge power. And in some ways it's, I don't want to say a game, but, there's a level of entitlement that abusers will have. There's a level of they'll patiently wait. And so they might develop a trusting relationship with a child over months, weeks, years before they actually commit some sort of heinous act.
Right, right. All right. Dr. Montgomery, you already spoke to the fact that a lot of persons who themselves become sex offenders, that they themselves were exposed to it. But are there any other psychological issues that would predispose someone to becoming an offender, or even predispose somebody to becoming a victim of sex abuse?
Yes and yes. As far as an offender, we're looking at people whose personality has not developed appropriately over time, and so their personality includes a lot of shame and guilt, and so they have to kind of compensate for certain self-esteem issues that are going on with them. We see that these are, like I said, people who are reaching for power. So you might see that they've really struggled with depression and anxiety as a child, and they've compensated in different ways to kind of, they might themselves have, again, been abused or used in some way. So hurt people in a lot of ways.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we also, as far as I don't want to say victors, but survivors of abuse, oftentimes, especially with children, we see that there might be something going on in the family system where they might not have all of the attention that they need. Every child has a different level of need for attention. I have two, and they have two very different levels of needs for attention. And sometimes, you know, if we don't recognize that, if we're overwhelmed with just putting food on the table, then we might not recognize that need for attention. You know, and someone else who's preying on the child will recognize that need for attention and be able to fill that need for attention. We also see that, you know, children who are have some sort of disability in a way. Again, like you said in the introduction, I work with deaf and hard of hearing kids, adults, and who used to be kids. And oftentimes they're preyed on because they have some sort of disability, deafness, and their abuser says, well, who can you tell? No one has bothered to learn sign language in your family. No one has bothered to learn how to communicate. You're kind of stuck with
communication deficit.
Right. Same thing with children with physical disabilities, you know. Children with mental health conditions, children with learning disabilities, those children are vulnerable. And to people who are going to prey on the things that they might not be getting at home, make sure that they provide it and develop that relationship with the child. And then from that relationship of trust, they develop a special relationship with the child. And from that relationship, they're able to coerce the child or convince the child to do certain things that are inappropriate.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that leads to my next question. So what are the warning signs that someone is capable of committing sexual crimes?
Yeah. So you're looking for people who spend a lot of time with children. They might have a special child friend. They might have some hostility towards women, hostility towards you know, the normal system of things. These are people who might struggle again with self-esteem, but they're charming. They're overconfident. They might have a sense of bravado about them. You know, this kind of outer position that they present to the world, that they've got everything together, but really inside they're not very confident about themselves. They often have distorted perceptions and ideas, and so, you know, they're entitled. They might think that, you know, this child is in some way coming on to them or favors them in some way, that sort of thing. These are folks who, you know, are often the ones who might blame the victim or blame alcohol or deny that they did anything. They're emotionally lonely.
Right.
You know, and you know, they're feeling like they need to in some way exert their power over the other person. But a lot of times there's some insecure attachment that they've had, attachment to their caregivers, and some insecure ways where their needs weren't met. And unfortunately, they just kind of perpetuate harming other people.
Can you just expound a little on what you mean by blaming the victim?
Oh, yes. So you'll see that, especially like you're interviewing some perpetrators or offenders, and they will say, well, you know, the child kind of wanted the behavior or elicited the behavior or rubbed up against them, or they give some kind of suggestion that the child initiated the behavior. You see that often with sexual assault as well. Well, you know, and even the community does it. We're the first one to ask a young lady, well, what was she wearing? Who's been assaulted. We're the first ones. But it doesn't matter what she's wearing. You know, it matters that the individual who took something that didn't belong to them, who touched something that they shouldn't have touched, that's where the problem lies in. Regardless of what, you know, the person is wearing or how you might feel that they flirted with you or they opened that door, regardless of that, everyone has to control their own body and their own urges, and they're responsible for themselves. And so when we make excuse for our behavior, we're blaming the victim.
Right. So in that, they are projecting the blame for the assault or the abuse onto the victim.
Onto the victim.
Right.
And the victim already has so many layers of shame, you know, that they are having to deal with, you know, and then having the community kind of echo that, you know, well, what were you wearing or why were you there? You shouldn't have been in that area of town, or you should not have been in that environment, that sort of thing. Having those things echoed just makes the shame worse and heavier.
Right. And you just segued into my other question, which is you just mentioned about the shame that victims sometimes suffer, the tremendous shame and guilt. But what are some of the other results of sexual abuse or sexual assault?
Self-loathing, feeling like I have clients who are like, you know, their body isn't their own anymore, particularly clients who've had abuse over and over and over again for years. You know, a client whose father was the abuser, and she feels like her body is just for other people's pleasure. It's not hers. It's not for her. Loathing just being in her skin. Just being in her skin gives her anxiety. You know, because remembering the touching, remembering the things that your body has been forced to do. Struggling with attachment to people. How do I get close to someone when I grew close to this person and they seem to be, you know, a good person in my life? They seem to be taking care of me. Because like I said, in a lot of ways, these offenders are grooming the individual for abuse. And so they've had a relationship with them for a while. With sexual assault and rape, sometimes it's, you know, it's a date rape. The person has gone out on a date and this has happened. But in a lot of other ways, this happens because we form some trusting relationship with someone who has abused that trust. And so our ability to attach to someone in a healthy way, and that attachment not be based on what my body can do for you, that is distorted in a lot of ways. And so being able as a therapist to kind of help repair that breach. One of the hugest things is the nervous system dysregulation. So if I can explain a little bit. So let's say for some reason you're out in the jungle and there is a lion, and that lion he spotted you and he's acting as though he's going to attack. Our bodies are made by God to react to that kind of stress. Our bodies are made to either fly away, run away, flight, or fight. So depending on, what's going on, I might stand and fight. If you are threatening my child, I'm probably going to stand and fight. If you are a lion coming after me, I'm probably going to try to flee. I'm going to run away. But inside of my body, different things happen. Okay, so whatever food that my stomach was trying to digest, digestion stops because I've got to run. I've got to fight. I don't have time to digest my food. I might lose my bowels or lose, all of that gets all twisted and turned. I'm sweating. I've got anxiety. My heart's pumping. All of these sorts of things happen when I'm running from a lion. Well, if the lion is your own dad coming into your room every night, imagine what your body chemicals are doing. You're in a constant state of stress. And we know people who are struggled a lot with different stressors. Let's say they live in a war-torn country. Their body is stuck in that position. And it's the same thing for a child who is being perpetrated against constantly. It's the same thing for a woman who's had multiple, instances of sexual assault, rape, being touched inappropriately. It's the same thing. So biologically, our brain is producing chemicals that it should produce when there's a stressful situation that we need to flee from or that we need to fight from. But as a child, your brain is not supposed to have those chemicals constantly. And so your body starts to develop under a chemical imbalance that it shouldn't normally develop in. And so we end up having issues with regulating our nervous system. Sleep. We'll see bedwetting. A child who's already stopped bedwetting and is potty trained, but now they're 5 or 6 and someone started touching them and they've regressed into bedwetting again. And it's just out of the blue, you're not sure. Emotions. Our emotions are about the things that we see in the behaviors and such, but our emotions are also chemicals in our body. And so when we have been assaulted, we've been traumatized, those chemicals go up and down. You have anxiety, you have depression, you have all of PTSD, all of these trauma symptoms.
By PTSD, I mean post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah.
Right, and there's a question coming through in the chat, and I must apologize before I even said that to Ms. Tashian Burgess. Her organization is actually the Women's Center of Jamaica Foundation, right? The question that is coming through in the chat, I hope you received their answer. The question was, how can parents spot or identify these behaviors in children from very early? Dr. Mom Premier would have touched on a lot of ways that you'll be able to use to identify that your child is experiencing that type of trauma. Is there anything else that you'd want to add to answer that question, Dr. Mom?
Yeah, well, physically, you're gonna look for scars, sore body parts. Often children, especially young kids, don't have the emotional language to explain what's going on with them. And so instead, they're going to say they have a tummy ache, or they're going to say they don't feel good. They might have headaches. And those are pretty much just words for saying, I don't feel good. So you might be looking for a stomach ache, but also be looking for any kind of emotional things that are going on when a child says they have a stomach ache or they have a headache or something like that. if it becomes a pattern where you're seeing a lot of achy pain complaints, you're going to want to be a lot more focused on what's going on. Infections. So a child might have what you might think is a urinary tract infection, but it might be, a yeast infection from, being touched and such. Or it might be a urinary tract infection from so much mishandling of their private parts. You might see, like I said, bedwetting. Emotionally, you're going to see some acting out, some anger, change in eating habits. They might be fearful of certain people. Please, please, when your child doesn't want to be around someone, don't force them. Really sit down and talk to your child about what about that person they don't like. You might see them get new toys or gifts out of the blue, and what drove that special friend to buy that for you? So those are some things that you're going to look for. Psychological things might be, particularly at a certain age, kids might start doing some self-harming behaviors, cutting. They might have some really severe depression that ends with suicidal thoughts, drug use, because they're trying to numb out and not feel the psychological pain. So they're using those drugs to cover it up. You might see them running away often, eating issues. We have bulimia and anorexia. Oftentimes, a lot of times they are related to some sexual abuse. Promiscuity, because we get into that pattern of our body being used for pleasure for certain things, and so and there's a whole layer of increased promiscuity or increased sexual acting out in children or adults, even after an adult has been raped. One of the first signs or first symptoms is that they might really struggle with, hypersexuality. And so it kind of awakens the body. The body is trying to really kind of regain power. Your body becomes kind of dependent on that chemical reaction when we have sex. And a child doesn't know what to do with all those hormones. We have a lot of things that we can look for as a parent to kind of protect our children from abuse.
All right, I'm sorry about that. My internet chipped out a little bit. But Dr. Montpremier, how can people who have been sexually abused learn to cope with it?
Learn to cope, yes. And I'm glad you said cope, because, that's often what we're doing. We're coping, we're working towards healing. Sometimes we'll say to people, well, that happened a long time ago. But this thing is, if it's entrenched in long term, it can be biological. Like I said, it changes your brain structure and how the chemicals are produced in your brain. Trauma does that to us. And so sometimes we have to start with coping. That is the first place on the road to healing. We have to start with coping. Just being able to tolerate being in our bodies, just be able to tolerate telling our stories, just being able to open up and trust again. And so one of the things that we do in treatment is really making a trusting relationship between therapist and the client, and helping them to work through trust to be able to build good attachments to people, healthy attachments to people. Because sometimes when we've grown up being abused and used, we end up attracting users. We end up attracting abusers. We end up not setting good boundaries for ourselves. And so people treat us the way they would want to because we haven't set up boundaries and because they are takers. And so we want to make sure that clients are really working on their boundaries, working on really working on relieving a lot of that shame and understanding, how much I had a part in this versus how much responsibility did the person who offended, how much responsibility they should have for the things that are going on with me. Sometimes survivors feel like they were an accomplice. The children feel like, well, I did it too. I was part of it, and that shame is just so heavy.
Okay.
So really working with.
All right.
Go ahead.
All right, Dr. Mom Premier, to our audience, we have been sticking to Dr. Mom Premier for a while now, asking her these questions to lay the foundation. I hope you understand that an hour with Dr. Mom Premier, most of us could not afford it. So while she's here volunteering her services, we're utilizing her to the maximum. But we're going to bring in other panelists.
Amen.
I'm sorry, I'm having some internet issues. I'm saying we're going to bring in our other panelists as well into the discussion. Before we do that, we are going to hear now a very stirring and touching testimonial from one of our panelists, a young lady that was a victim of sex abuse. And as I said in her introduction, we're not going to use her real name. We've given her the pseudonym of Andreen. Andreen, are you there?
Oh, I am there. I'm here. I'm here.
All right, good. Andreen, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to have you on the program with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, it's a pleasure. I'm just asking you now, to share with us your experience with sex abuse or sexual abuse.
Okay, so when I was 16 years old, I was abused by my father, the person who was supposed to be protecting me from everything. No, I went to someone who was supposed to be protecting me also, but nothing was done. I don't know if it was that they did not believe me, or it was because he was on drugs. So my father has been on drugs for all my life. He has been to rehab in and out, and that was very hard on me, other from the sexual abuse. So sometimes he would disappear and then return. So before all this took place, he was absent for about 3 months, and then he came along. I did not know what to do about the situation because I was really afraid of him. I did not know what to do. Anytime he would come around, I would just crawl into myself. Even when I went to school, he would be calling me every single day, every single minute around the clock. He would be calling and calling and calling, even though I would ignore him. So on my 16th birthday, he called me, and I did not want to answer, but then my grandmother, which was his mother, told me to answer him. So I spoke with him and I asked him why did he do it, and he said he did it because him sure him knows him I have a man a touch me. So nothing wrong, and it's supposed to be him touching me and nobody else. And that really did a lot of damage. Also, he died the next year in 2017 because of kidney failure. The manner in which this was done, you would not know that it was taking place, even though a person, my mother, saw with her own two eyes and didn't do anything at all about it, and nothing at all. I'm not sure if she was afraid of him, but she saw with her own two eyes. It happened 2 to 3 times, 3 times,
Okay.
like week after week after week. So yeah.
Wow. Wow. And indeed, very, very stirring. Um, uh, I can't, I can't help but to feel a little bit emotional listening to what you're saying. Uh, to my panelists, any of you have any questions for Andrine based on what she just said? Panelists, are you hearing me?
Yes, I hear you. I thank you so much for your strength and your bravery, just sharing your story. Um, and I pray that you found some healing. Would you be able to share some of the ways in which emotionally you struggle so that people can understand?
Emotionally, it did a lot of damage. I started to fail in school. I didn't want to be around my friends. My friends can tell you that at that time I was, I wasn't a part of church like how I used to be. I wasn't active again. I wasn't close to them. I just wanted to be out of everyone's company and by myself. It still hurts a lot because, it feels like I don't have anybody or didn't have anybody, because this is my first time speaking about it. First time ever speaking about it.
Wow. Andrian, there's a question coming via the chat now, and the person wants to know, Esmeline Mattis, she wants to know, do you have a relationship with your mom now?
Not a good one. Not a good one.
Okay. All right. Um, do any of our other panelists have any questions for Andrian as we move along? We're going
Yes.
to be,
No.
Go ahead.
Hi, Andrine. I'm
Hello.
from Sissoko, so I'm going to probably ask some of the enforcement questions. Since you mentioned that this is the first time you're talking about this, so I presume you have not gotten the kind of closure and the assistance to cope with these situations. So you haven't spoken to police and all of that. So I'm going to encourage you to to speak to somebody from Sissoka so that we can put you on to our other multi-agency partners to help you to cope after these kind of abuses.
Good afternoon.
Okay. Good afternoon.
Oh, sorry. You responded. Go ahead, Andrew.
I was saying, okay, I will do that.
All right. We'll allow Dr. Vernal to ask the final question as we move on. We're actually going to be moving on to Sissoka, Ms. Samantha Smith. But Dr. Vernal, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't going to ask a question. I'm actually commending her for her, being able to speak publicly, because there are many persons who can't, and this will help individuals. But just one thing in terms of her experience, just to say that her father's approach to abusing her is seen in many areas, and one of the things I would want us to do is to look at how some people think that there are many men who think they're to be the first ones to have sex with their daughters. I don't know where it came from, but that's a reality of our culture, and it just shows that there are so many things that we need to get right. We need to get it out so people know, and get it right so we can help and hopefully prevent some of these things that have happened to some of our young ladies and young men.
All right. All right. So as I said before, we're going to be moving on. We're going to be talking to Ms. Samantha Smith. She is Deputy Superintendent of Police, and she works with the Center for the Investigation of Sexual Offenses and Child Abuse. And at this time, we welcome Ms. Samantha, Deputy Superintendent Samantha Smith.
Good afternoon, and thanks for having me.
All right. Deputy Superintendent, just can you tell us a little bit about Sissoka? What are the roles and functions of Sissoka?
Well, Sissoka stands for the Center for Investigations of Sexual Offenses and Child Abuse. And our primary role is to investigate all reports of sexual offenses and assaults, and investigate them in a manner bringing them closure to the victims, and finding the perpetrators and putting them before the court. Our functions have different stages. So once the report is made to us, or we have investigation coming to our attention that there is some form of abuse happening, we investigate and intervene to see the truth of it and to prepare case files and putting them before the court once we identify the aggressor. At Sissoka, we have a multi-agency approach because we try to cater to the whole man. So when persons are assaulted, there is the emotional side, there's the physical side. So your body physically changes, it's violated. And we have the medical persons who treats with this to give you medication to prevent pregnancies, and if there are diseases transmitted, that part of it, we have a medical team that treats with that. Our aim in Jamaica is to have all the Sissoka offices having that multi-agency prong where the doctor would be on site at office. Presently, only Sissoka Kingston has that. And we have 14 other SOCAs
Okay.
island-wide, but only Sissoka Kingston
Okay.
has that. We cater to the emotional side in that we have, we work very close with the Women's Center, and we have a referral system where once you are identified as a victim or somebody who is so affected by the sexual assault, you are referred to the, oh my God, I'm sorry. You're referred to the Victim Support Division of the Ministry of Justice, and you are taken through a series of counseling. And this approach, we believe, is necessary because it's not that your life ends when these offenses and assaults happen, but it's about having life after these assaults happen.
Right. And I noticed that embedded in the name of your unit, Center for the Investigation of Sexual Offenses and Child Abuse, is the distinction made between sexual offenses and child abuse.
Yes.
Is it that, because I know that sexual, under the Child Care and Protection Act, child abuse, sexual abuse is also mentioned in that act. So is it that the sexual offenses applies to the adult and the child abuse to the children? Is that why the distinction was made?
No, it's not. In fact, our legislations are that treats with sexual offenses and child abuse are unique. And I say unique because the Child Care and Protection Act of 2004 tells us and guides us, and as police officers, we enforce that the children, the welfare of a child is of paramount importance, and that they are to be cared for in such a way where they are protected from all kinds of abuses, including sexual abuses.
Right.
The age limit in the Child Care and Protection Act, it brings a child to the age of 18. So it's 0 to 18 that you're a child under the Child Care and Protection Act. However, under the Sexual Offenses Act, you are permitted to have sexual relations. You are permitted to have sexual relations at the age of 16. So that disparity within the legislations, in the legislations, creates an air of confusion.
Right.
So we have to, as police officers, we have to be very careful in how we treat with matters. So it's not a case where the Child Care and Protection Act is for assaults against children. It is for children, all welfare issues affecting children 0 to 18. And it's all the issues.
Right.
Under the Child Care and Protection Act, it mandates authorized persons. And authorized persons are teachers, coaches, those persons who have care and custody of children at some stage. So teachers, doctors, if they come in your care, those kind of persons. Once it comes to your attention that some abuse has happened to the child, and it does not necessarily have to be sexual abuse, you must report it to the Office of the Children's Registry and the Child Protection and Family Services Agency. If it is a sexual assault, you should contact the SOCA if the abuse is of a sexual nature. To go ahead, Chris.
All right, Deputy Superintendent, I have one quick question coming from the chat. And it's asking if Andrine's mother can be charged for failing to report.
Yes, she can be charged for failing to report. And that's why I advise her to have a little closer talk with Sisoka, and let's see how things can work there. Okay. Because it is not, while sentencing is the purview of the judge, there are programs happening now where it assists to make you a better parent. So not in all cases, the parent being charged for a particular neglecting the child offense is a bad thing, because there are programs, in addition to the sentence, there are programs that helps you to be a better parent.
Parenting programs, right?
Yes, we do have those.
Right. All right, just one final thing before we move on to our next panelist. How can persons who may want to speak to someone at Sisoka, how can they get in touch with someone from Sisoka?
All right, so Sisoka Kingston, the telephone numbers are 926-4079, and we are located at 3 Ruthven Road. We have parish offices in all the parishes in Jamaica. And if getting to a Sisoka proves difficult for you, get to the nearest police station. You will be assisted.
Okay, so you'll be directed to Sisoka at the nearest
or
police
assisted
station. Thank you.
Sisoka.
Thank you ever so much, Deputy Superintendent. Samantha Smith, you have enlightened us a lot on the role of the Center for the Investigation of Sexual Offenses and Child Abuse, Sisoka. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, you're welcome. So now we move on quickly to a representative from the Women's Center of Jamaica Foundation, WCJF, Mrs. Tashian Burgess-Smith. Mrs. Burgess-Smith, welcome to our program this afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas, but just ensuring I correct you, I'm not in any way representing the Women's Center. Although I work there, this presentation is being done independently.
Okay, well, good, but we still welcome your knowledge and your depth of knowledge and expertise that you can add to a conversation such as this. While you're not officially representing the center, can you just tell us a little bit about the work that is done at the Women's Center Foundation, Jamaica Foundation?
Right. So, so it is actually the Women's Center of Jamaica Foundation, and it's among one of the, and as DSP mentioned earlier, the referral process is a multi-agency effort. It's interconnected. So it's not just Sisoka, it's not just Women's Center, it's not just victim support. All agencies, non-governmental and governmental agencies, they are interconnected. The Women's Center is one of the many organizations that plays a role in the referral process of persons who would have experienced sexual abuse. So in general, the Women's Center Foundation under the Ministry of Gender, Culture, Entertainment and Sport offers services for adolescent mothers, meaning under 18, right? So mothers under 18. So they not just offer to the mothers themselves, but they also offer counseling sessions to the baby fathers, the parents of the baby fathers, the parents of the adolescent mothers themselves. They also do walk-in counseling sessions. So a person does not have to be affiliated with the Women's Center any at all to receive counseling services from the Women's Center. And one important aspect of the Women's Center that they facilitate the reintegration of these girls into the education system.
Okay. I don't want to put you on the spot, but can you maybe share with us or give us an idea, enlighten us to the scope, the scale of clients that you work with who come to the center as a result of sexual abuse?
All right, so at this point in time, I would not be able
resolved.
to share that information.
Okay. All right, but you do have cases of that nature, right?
Right.
And what type of therapy do you offer for persons that are victims of sexual abuse or sex assault?
All right, so the Women's Center, Victim Support Unit, all of the agencies that work with persons who are sexually abused offer counseling. However, there might be some deep-rooted issues that the counsel which are provided in these agencies might not be able to manage. So these agencies, you realize, have what they call specialist agencies, or they'll have psychologists who they collaborate with, who work with persons who have more deep-rooted issues.
Okay, so the persons with the deeper rooted issues, they would be
right. So you'll have
referred.
persons who might have, they develop self-esteem problems. Some persons, it is typical for them to develop suicidal thoughts, suicidal ideations. So with these critical circumstances, you have to seek the necessary therapeutic, because many of these organizations, the counselors employed do not provide that level of psychotherapeutic intervention that is needed. So you would need what is called a specialist counselor or a psychologist.
All right. And do you find that the cases, the majority of the cases that come to the Women's Center though, are they of the severity where you have to send them on, or can you at these centers deal with the majority of the cases that come in?
All right, so again, I will not be able to speak directly to the Women's Center, but I can speak generally, right?
Right.
So, as I said, the Women's Center organized foundation deals with generally adolescent mothers, and these are persons who they may become pregnant, they may be victims of sexual abuse, and they're not able to continue their formal education. So the Women's Center provides that avenue for them. The situations are different, the circumstances are different on what might be of a higher scale than another. Cases might be on different levels on the scale than others as well.
Okay. All right. I'm going to put a scenario to you.
Sure.
Say I'm a female. I'm under the age of 16, right? And I am living in a scenario where I am being sexually, physically abused, and it's repetitive, and it's been happening for over a protracted period of time. And I come to the Women's Center. What are the options available to me? Is it that Women's Center is able to take me out of that situation and put me in a place of safety and cater for my, first and foremost, my safety issues, safety requirements? Is the Women's Center able to do those? I know that you can't speak directly for them, but
right, and I'll be general again. I'll be general again. All right, so
right.
DSP mentioned that multi-agency approach. Now, what you mentioned is not the responsibility of Women's Center. That's not the responsibility, right? That's the responsibility of CISOCA, CPFSA, to deal with that aspect of removing a child from abusive home or abusive situation. The Women's Center, as part of the referral process, provides an avenue for that young mother to continue her education until she's able to be reintegrated in the system. And also, the center also provides the opportunity for them to even bring their babies, because there's a nursery provided as well.
Okay, all right. Thank you ever so much. We are moving on, but we're not finished with you yet.
Thomas, can I just All right, so we have been speaking a little bit about the referral process. DSP mentioned, based on Sissoka's side, the referral process. I want to highlight the importance. The referral process is very, very important, and it's mainly for rehabilitation, restoration. So I've been sexually abused. My normal functioning, my normal state has been interrupted. Now the referral process is supposed to offer me an avenue to bring me back to that state of normalcy. Not to the same state, but to a level where I can function normally. So the referral process is not just a simple process. And I want to highlight three main things that must happen in a referral process: follow-up, action, and feedback. Very, very critical.
Right.
So you have the referee and the referrer agency. If it is that I'm a referrer and I refer a client or a victim to another organization, it is my responsibility to follow up to see if the client has accessed the service that I would have referred him or her to, right? Action. The referee needs to ensure that whatever the client is referred for, action is taken. Follow up. As a victim, I want to know what is happening. I don't sit down in your office with you. You need to ensure that I'm kept abreast. If it is that a timeline is not being met, call me. Miss Burgess, I am so sorry, but we're not able to do this at this time. And you give me, we probe another solution. You get what I'm saying? So I don't want us to think of the referral process as just writing a piece of paper and sending the client with it. It is a very critical process in the rehabilitation of these persons who would have experienced sexual abuse.
Right, thank you a lot. You have been most informative. Someone's making a comment.
Mr. Thomas? Yes,
sure.
Good afternoon. Just a question for Mr. Burgess as it relates to really helping the young ladies that who are unable to manage the children. Do you refer the children to state care in those circumstances where you, from what you have seen, they're unable to be effective mothers?
Could you repeat the question? I don't think I understand what you're asking.
At the Women's Center, when the young mothers take in the babies and you are trying to reintegrate them basically into the process to assist them to be good mothers, at any point wherein you find that they are unable to really care for the child, at any point do you refer their children to for them to get additional help dealing with the children?
All right, I wish I wasn't getting the Women's Center specific questions, because again, I have to be very careful because in nowhere am I representing Women's Center. But I can answer your question. The Women's Center is so equipped and collaborates with the different organizations. As I had said before, they're in no way responsible, or their mandate is not to interfere in the removal or any such situation of any child from any home. However, referral or in consultation with the necessary or the relevant agencies, that can be done, the referral, but we don't do that. The Women's Center, I don't think they don't do that.
All right, Mrs. Burgess, there's a question in the chat, and the question is what about those young ones who cannot manage to care for the child themselves? Does the Women's Center refer the babies to the state for care?
All right, Mr. Thomas, can I decline to answer? Because it's very organizational specific question.
Okay.
And I want to be very careful.
Okay, I understand, understood. All right, there's another comment that I want to touch on, and this comment was made by Ms. Jean Duhaney. She is one of the managers at the CPFSA, Child Protection and Family Services Agency, and she's saying that information reports of abuse can also be routed through the National Children's Registry, and the number for that is 888-PROTECT or 888-776-8328. They don't have to give their names. They will be given a tracking number where they can follow up on the cases. All right. So at this time, we are going to be introducing our second testimonial. This testimonial will be coming to us from another victim um, of sexual abuse, and it comes to us from Miss Latisha Parks. Now, this is her real name, and as I said earlier, Miss Parks has actually written a book about her experience, and we are very pleased to have her with us as she will share her experience of sexual abuse. Welcome to the program, Ms. Parks. Are you there? Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. All right, we can hear you and we can see you. You're coming across a little bit distorted. I'm not sure if it's my internet or it's yours. You can talk though. We're just asking you to share with us what you experienced. Latisha? All right, I'm gonna ask our technical people to work on the connection that we have with Latisha. And it gives me opportunity to bring in one of the under shepherds of the flock. And not that Pastor Badu Fletcher, I'm saving the best for last, but I definitely wanted you to put the cap on this afternoon's discussion by bringing in the spiritual aspect of sexual abuse and the church's position on sex abuse, right? In a book called Sexual Abuse in 9 North American Cultures, Treatment and Prevention by Catherine Taylor and Lisa Aronson Fontes. In chapter 7, these authors state that there's a high rate of sexual abuse in the SDA church. Pastor Badu Fletcher, what are your thoughts on this assertion? Pastor Fletcher.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
No, I cannot verify. I cannot substantiate what that book has stated. But I know that it is present in the church, not just the Adventist church. Many organizations, social organizations, religious organizations, it's present. Now I speak as an ordained minister of the Adventist Church. Right. In 1995, the General Conference in session, Utrecht, the Netherlands, states the following: Seventh-day Adventist affirms the dignity and worth of each human being and decry all forms of physical, sexual, and emotional abuse and family violence. Right. We recognize, it says, the global extent of this problem, whether it's in North America, whether it's in Africa, whether it's in the Caribbean. It's a global challenge and the serious long-term effects upon the lives of all involved. It continues, we believe that Christians must respond to abuse and family violence, both within the church and in the community. We take seriously, I noticed that, we take seriously reports of abuse and violence and have highlighted these issues for discussion at this International Assembly. Of course, as I mentioned, at the 1995 General Conference session in the Netherlands. We believe that to remain indifferent and unresponsive is to condone, perpetuate, and potentially extend such behavior. Then it continues, we accept our responsibility to cooperate with other professional services to listen and care for those suffering from abuse and family violence, to highlight the injustices and to speak out in defense of victims. We will help persons in need to identify and access the range of available professional services. When, final paragraph, it says, when changed attitudes and behavior open possibilities for forgiveness and new beginnings, we will provide a ministry of reconciliation. We will assist families in grief over relationships that cannot be restored. We will address the spiritual questions confronting abused persons, seeking to understand the origins of abuse and family violence, and developing better ways of preventing the recurring cycle. So this statement was approved and voted by the General Conference of SDA, the ADCOM Administrative Committee, and was released by the Office of the President June 29 to July 8, 1995 at the GC session. A little later on, I'll give you some more information as to what the church, in more detail, what the church does for individuals who are abused.
Right. It's good that the church has a policy statement on how we deal with sexual abuse. And as you rightfully stated, you know, it is present in most churches, in some churches more than others. But it's good that there's a policy. However, the writers, the authors that I mentioned earlier, there's an assertion that they're making that there is a culture of secrecy among church people, and that culture of secrecy fosters such abuse and allows these heinous crimes against persons, sexual crimes against persons, to be perpetuated. What are your views on that, Pastor Fletcher?
I'm a pastor now for 27 years, a pastor in district work for 23, and I still serve at the local level here in St. Catherine. I cannot think of any time that information about child abuse or any sexual abuse or child abuse or any other form of abuse that comes to the board that the church doesn't take a serious stance on. It might be happening at some local in some other countries. I cannot speak to that. I can only speak to my own experience, because the church is very firm. If individuals have abused family members, worse, children, sexual abuse, they are dealt with in the strongest way possible. Of course, the church has only two ways of church discipline. One is censorship, and one is removal from church membership. That's all the church can do in terms of discipline. But I've known of cases where the church has reported child abuse to the police and stand with the victim and help the victim to get professional counseling and professional help, and also general support. So to say that the Adventist church that I know sweeps these things under the carpet and treat it as to cover up things, to protect individuals, I'm not saying it may not exist in some local, but I am not aware of it.
Okay, right. Well, in general, still, there are one of the accusations that secular organizations have made against the church is that the church operates under some codes of secrecy to prevent members being exposed, and that people will go the extra mile to protect the members, protect their reputations. And sometimes because it's members who hold high offices in the church, this kind of thing is prevalent worldwide. I'm glad for what you just stated plainly, Pastor Fletcher. All right, so I have another question though. What are some of the treatment options that are available within the church for victims of sexual abuse? There's somebody in the chat who is also asking, and I think this person directed the question to the general panelists, if they are aware of where adults who are sexually abused as children, where they can get counseling. No. But Pastor, this question to you, what are some of the treatment options available within the church?
The church has a responsibility to do a number of things for those who are abused. And sometimes not just the victim, but the wider family. I'm going to go through very quickly so you have a broad understanding of what the church does and what it sees as its responsibility in cases of abuse. One, to care for those involved. Notice it says to care for those involved in family violence and to respond to their needs by A, listening to, very important, and accepting those suffering from abuse, loving and affirming them as persons of value and worth. B, highlighting the injustices of abuse and speaking out in defense of victims, both within the community of faith and in society. Yes. C, providing a care, supportive ministry to families affected by violence and abuse, seeking to enable both victims and perpetrators to access counseling with Seventh-day Adventist professionals where available, or other professional resources in the community. D, encouraging the training and placement of licensed Seventh-day Adventist professional services for both church members and the surrounding communities. Offering a ministry of reconciliation when the perpetrator's repentance makes possible the contemplation of forgiveness and restoration in relationships. Repentance always includes acceptance of full responsibility for the wrongs committed, willingness to make restitution in every way possible, and changes in behavior to eliminate the abuse. A number of other things. This document is a statement voted by the GC Administrative Committee on August 27, 1996 by the General Conference Executive Committee at the Annual Council in Costa Rica. So the church is very clear, and I just read portions of it, very, very clear and very, very strong as far as disciplining members who find themselves guilty of child abuse or sexual abuse. We don't have the time, Brother Thomas, but if you go to the Church Manual 2015, most recent edition, page 62 and 67, speaks to the church's disciplinary measures that are meted out to individuals who are perpetrators of sexual abuse, all right, against children and against the family in general. And these are not mutually exclusive either in terms of the law of the land. So whatever we do, we believe that if you have done the crime, you must do the time. Yes? Right. And we can visit you in the jail and pray with you. We will visit you in the jail and pray with you. But if you are going to do that, you are going to have to face the law. And we are going to support reporting you to the law. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Pastor. There's a final question for you, though. What can the average church member do to help with the healing process of the victims? And what should they not do? Because, you know, sometimes people are trying to help, but they always somehow find the wrong thing to say, the thing that can push a victim further away from trust and from openness. So what can the church members do and what should they not do?
I would recommend that if you know of individuals who are experiencing abuse, whatever form of abuse, get help for that person. Do not in any way blame the victim for what might have happened to the victim. Stay away from that and help the member to be confident. Sometimes their self-esteem may be low. Guide that member or that child to seek professional help. And in our local conference here in Central Jamaica Conference, there is a counseling unit right there at our clinic, at the Sydenham Health Clinic, owned and operated by Seventh-day Adventists. They are clinical and counseling psychologists. And so we recommend going to our professionals so that they can be helped psychologically. And of course, to report the crime to Sissoka so that they can pursue the perpetrators. Because sometimes it is not just one victim, it might be a number of victims. You might be just aware of one. Report it so that the crime, the abuse can end. We need to stop the violence. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Pastor Gary Badu Fletcher. And Pastor Fletcher, as most of us would know, Seventh-day Adventist pastor, is also a chaplain, deputy superintendent, no, hold on a second, assistant commissioner in charge of the chaplaincy unit of the Jamaica Constabulary Force. Thank you very much, Pastor Fletcher. All right, now, are we able to make a connection with Ms. Parks now, with Latisha Parks? Latisha, are you there? All right,
she's going to come through me, so I'm going to put her on the line now.
Okay.
Go ahead, Lat. Go ahead, Latisha.
Latisha?
Able to hear me, Mr. Thomas?
Yes, yes, we're hearing you. You can go ahead. We're just asking you to share with us your experience with sexual abuse.
Right. First, I want to say thanks to Mr. Spence and the Kitchen Soul SDA Church family for putting together this program. It's really an awesome program so far. It's commendable. And thank you guys for giving persons like myself a platform to speak. So my abuse started at about age 11, 12, thereabouts. So I was sexually abused by my grandfather, who was also my dad. Pretty complicated right there. It was a terrible experience. It also includes other abuse as well. Coming from that, I also contracted an from it, something that could be cured. So that was the good thing about that. I don't know what else to say. Oh my God. It was done by my dad.
Okay, okay. Latisha, thank you. Thank you for sharing. And we appreciate your courage to know that this is not easy. This is something that from experience, it takes some people years and years and years, way into their adult lives before they're able to open up about it. And even at that time, you know, it's timidly done. So we thank you for speaking. At the same time, I will ask my panelists if they have any questions for Latisha.
In terms of what you just said also, it's important to note that, yes, it takes years. I know I'm just 22. So many people ask me how I got over it. You know, my mom, she passed away in 2017 through a tragic car accident. And up to the point when she died, we never had a relationship because she was the person who sent me back there, even though she was also abused by him, which was the reason why I came about as another that I have. So up to the point she died, we didn't have a relationship. And so that different people deal with it different ways, because for me, I would say that she didn't deal with it any at all. Just by seeing me, she was so upset. She was always angry. She would abuse me emotionally and physically. So that part was there as well.
And I'm very glad that you brought that up, because I've had to deal with that as well, especially in situations where a child reports to a mother, in the case of a father or stepfather, who is the breadwinner, sole provider of the home, that such abuse has taken place. The mother here recognizes that the source of income is at jeopardy, or the relationship with the man is in jeopardy. And instead of directing attention to the source of the problem, then the victim is further victimized. The victim is made to suffer more shame and blame and accusations, and you know, digging an even deeper ditch for the victim. So even mothers sometimes are guilty of adding to the suffering of their daughters or their children. Even boys, and we have not said this throughout the program, but boys, we haven't really emphasized it. It has been said. Boys are also sometimes a victim of sex abuse. Right now, I'm asking my panelists to weigh in on Latisha's testimonial.
Yeah,
Anybody
I would like to ask Latisha if since her experience, if she has had therapy. Have you been engaged with any professionals to help you with your with the challenges you have had?
Yes, I have. You hear me? Yes,
and how
I
has
have
it helped
been to a professional. However, especially while I was going to school, I was going through it because I was going through it, the abuse while I was going to school. And for me, the counseling, I would say it never worked, in the sense that every time I go, especially to a specific hospital that I was going, every week I would speak to a different counselor, and so I will then have to go over everything that I went over the week before, and so I felt like I wasn't making any progress. So at some point, I just forget about it. It would have affected me after stopping the counseling. I would have had phases where I went back and I felt sort of way about the abuse, because there were many times where I tried to kill myself and stuff like that. So far, I've not succeeded, thank God.
So that means you have not had a successful intervention from psychologists or counselors? Would you say?
So I just had to find different ways to deal with it. I had to find different ways to get over it. One of the major things that I did was to talk about it. One of the major things that I did was to talk about it. And what I can encourage other people to do is to talk, because when you talk, you get to release it. It works for me. I'm not saying it's going to work for everybody, but it does work. And also to forgive. because at some point I had to accept that, you know, I was never the issue, because the abuser leads you to believe that it was your fault and you are the reason this is happening to you. So I had to go over and tell myself, this is not my fault. And then I had to talk about it and also forgive the person who would have been involved.
Are you a Christian?
Yes, I am.
Has your relationship with God helped you with your journey as well?
Can you repeat that question?
If having been a Christian, your journey with God, did it help you to develop coping skills and to manage the challenges that you were facing?
Indeed. And also along the way, I would have met some great Christian people as well who would have been a part of this firm foundation that I can now say that I have. They are persons who have always been giving encouraging words, always checking up on me, always ensuring that I'm okay, always giving advice, basically.
So in other words, you had developed a support system around you that helped you through your journey.
Exactly.
Okay.
I
That's
do have
very
a support
good.
system.
And do you still have that support group with you?
Yes, I do.
Very good. Very good.
All right.
If I may.
Just before Dr. Mom Premier, I was just saying that it's so good that you highlighted the importance of the strength that you're able to draw from your spiritual connection with God, and from having, as Pastor Badu Fletcher said, you know, a support system, a godly support system, which is often all the difference, you know, having a real connection with God, having a godly support system. Sometimes the offenders, you're not able to get them in a place or get them to the place where you're able to pass on to them how much they have hurt you and how much they have put you through. And sometimes it's only the healing and the forgiveness that comes from the Spirit of God that is able to help the victim to make it through. And from a good and godly support system, people will be there to say, let us pray, give you some comfort, some strength. So I'm very happy. You're one of the lucky ones. You're one of the fortunate ones that was able to have that. Unfortunately, not everyone is so lucky. And if any one of you who aren't so lucky and you're listening to the program right now, just know that there's help out there. Somebody was saying something?
You hear me?
All right, Dr. Mom Premier, yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying also,
Go ahead.
Go ahead, sweetie, go ahead.
I was saying to Mr. Thomas that also on a note that she made about God and the church and stuff like that, as I was saying to Mr. Spence the other day, you know, how I look at it now would be different from how I looked at it before, because, you know, I would have blamed everyone. I'd have blamed my mom, I would have blamed God as well. Like, how can a God love me and still let this happen to me? But then I look at it from a totally different light, and I know you guys have not mentioned religion much since, but I look at it now from a different light in the sense it was a season that I had to go through in order to be the person that I am today. Because without certain experiences, I wouldn't have been so focused and so goal-oriented and stuff like that. I know everybody else deals with stuff differently, as I mentioned, and I have to constantly mention that. But I deal with it by telling myself that it was a season, and though it was wrong, I went through it for a specific reason, and I had to endure that season in order to come out on the other side and be victorious.
Good. And it didn't overcome you. You overcame it by the grace of God. So we thank God for that.
Go ahead, Dr. Mompier.
Yes, I
Said
just,
that you have some tips to share in terms of prevention.
yes, I do have some tips to share in terms of prevention, but I also wanted to just thank you so much for your strength and your encouragement for folks who are going through what you've gone through. I can't imagine having to sit from one counselor to another and retelling the story. That in itself is traumatic. Having to start all over again with the counselor, and I am grieved deeply that you've had to experience that. What I hope you would have experienced would be a close healing connection, because we are healed. Like you said, you were able to create this community around you, but healing occurs through healthy connections with people, with healthy people. And I'm so glad that God has blessed you to have those healthy people, and blessed you to be able to write out your story. Since you weren't able to have that counseling experience that's therapeutic, but to be able to find that therapy in writing out your story and in sharing it with others, and in some ways that's empowering yourself and empowering others, and being able to take back what was taken from you. So I just I got goosebumps just hearing your story and your strength. And I thank you so much for sharing. It's a story that needs to be shared. So I just wanted to share that. I also wanted to talk to parents a little bit about how we can go about protecting our children in specifics. And the situations that we've heard from the two young ladies tonight it has been parents who have harmed these young ladies. It has been parents. In situations where it's not a parent, where it's someone close to the family or someone in association with the child, what are ways we can do as parents to protect our kids? And that one is, please teach your children the biological names for their body parts. Body safety and privacy. Teach them about sex early. I have already begun conversations with my 8-year-old. She doesn't know all of the gory details, but she does know certain pieces of it. And I plan to layer it and give her a little bit more each and every time. But as you see, this young lady said this occurred to her at 11. And I gave you statistics about things occurring as young as 3, 4, 5 years old. So we need to make sure that children understand their body parts. And there's even been studies that show that offenders, they are turned off by kids who know the proper names for their body parts. And so they might not actually approach that child or continue to groom that child. If the child knows exactly what to say was touched inappropriately. Please monitor your children's websites and their social media. There are teenagers sending naked pictures of themselves on their phone. Teach kids that is a crime. That is a crime for people to receive these naked pictures, that they don't want to participate in this crime, and that it's teach them about respecting their body and their privacy. Remember that the most vulnerable time for a child is that after school time. And when they might be like transitioning and mom and dad's not home from work, and and there's not a lot of monitoring, or they come home from school, but it's like, oh, go out and play, enjoy yourself, that sort of thing. And if we can monitor our children for not being alone with someone, we don't want them to be in a one-on-one situation with, there are women who abuse children as well. It's like 9 or 10%. Mostly it is male. But then you also have when boys are abused as well, and it'll go both ways too. And so we want to just make sure that the child is not alone with someone for these long periods of time. Remember that abusers are mostly who you know. You've trusted them with your kids. So you need to make sure that you talk to your kids about holding secrets. Explain to them about good secrets and bad secrets. Good secrets are secrets that don't hurt anybody. Like, oh, we're being quiet and being a secret for a birthday party, right? We're doing a surprise birthday party. That's a good secret. A bad secret is something that makes you feel yucky inside, something that makes you feel ashamed for keeping. That's a bad secret, and that we need to make sure that children know that they won't be disciplined harshly when they share how people have taken advantage of them. These are really important things to make sure that we're putting in place for our children, because like I said, they're being targeted and groomed. They're targeted by people who are around you every day, and they're engaging them. They're building a close relationship with them. They're building that special relationship with them. They're testing the boundaries to see, will mommy notice that I bought you a new toy? Will mommy notice this? Will mommy notice that? Will, what time is they're learning the schedule of the household so that they can perpetrate their crime against your child. They want to isolate the child against the parent. So sometimes they're telling the child, your mom doesn't really care, your mom this, your mom that, your dad this, your dad that, so that the child is convinced of this abuser's view and doesn't really feel that parent is someone that they can come to. And once they've done that, then they start sexualizing the child and controlling the child through threats. And then this behavior can maintain for months, years. So we want to make sure that we're doing what we can to protect, that our eyes are open and watching, and that we're making sure that we're not leaving our children vulnerable. And if your child doesn't know their proper body parts, if your child doesn't know good touch and bad touch, we have to teach them those things, because we're leaving them vulnerable if we don't.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Laninia Mom-Premier. And I really thank you for your input, as well as my thanks and appreciation to all of our other panelists. Dr. Mom-Premier, Laninia Mom-Premier, she is a psychotherapist, and Mrs. Tashian Burgess-Smith, professional counselor. She works with the Women's Center Foundation of Jamaica. Dr. Gary Badu Fletcher, chaplain, assistant commissioner in charge of JCF chaplaincy unit, and Deputy Superintendent of Police, Ms. Samantha Smith from the Center of Investigation of Sexual Offenses and Child Abuse, right? And we also thank Letitia Parks and Andreen for their testimonials right now. Mr. Spence, you were saying something. I didn't get what you were saying. Handing back over to you now.
No, man. Go ahead, Chris. If that was not for you, I wasn't saying anything to you. Could you just ask the panelists, the other members of the panelists, to give their final words before we go into the closing? We have Vespers.
You're doing that now, man. You can ask them.
Oh, okay, members of the panel. In 30 seconds, could you just give us your final words of encouragement to all our viewers and for those who have been touched by this curse before we proceed? So let's leave a word of hope with them. I'm going to start with Mrs. Tashian. Could you leave a final word with our viewers, please?
Sure. I just want to emphasize some points that have already been stated. Parents, it's time for us to be proactive. We in Jamaica have a very reactive mentality, and we need to start being proactive instead of waiting to look for the signs. Put mechanisms in place to prevent you having to be put in a position to look for signs of abuse in your child. Put mechanisms in place, and as Dr. Mom from Yale stated, have conversations with your children, not just about sex and their body parts, but become holistically involved in their lives. Ask them about school, ask them about their friends. What subject did you do today? Why was school good or why was school bad? Start having those conversations. And I really want to emphasize the support that Dr. Fletcher brought out from that young lady's testimony. Healthy support is important. And it's not just supporting, oh, you're crying, let me hug you up. No, persons need empathy, they need compassion, and they need somebody to show genuine concern. So those are my 2 cents.
Hello again.
Hi, Andreen.
What I have to say is that God made a promise, and I've realized that He has always kept His promise. He said that He will never leave nor forsake us. No matter what struggle you are going through, what you face in life, God will always make a way. The devil can always delay, but he cannot destroy what God has in store for you. So keep the faith, hold firm, and just trust in God. And those are my few words for everyone.
Okay, thank you for that. As we wait on Mr. Thomas to come back, Brother Spence, can you please come in?
Sure, this is Dr. Montpremier. I just want to again encourage parents to make sure that they're watchful. I want to make sure that you prepare your children for the world. The world is not always a pretty place, and they need to have the tools to deal with people who might take advantage of them. So make sure that you prepare your children for the world, that you're looking out for them. And I'm knowing that even the people closest to you might be the people that might be hurting your child. For survivors, understand that this is not something that you get over. This is something you get through. And the people around you who love you, who are supporting you, they're the ones to hold on to tight to get through, to get to a point where you're not only just coping with the day-to-day struggles of being a survivor, but you're thriving. You have learned the tools that you need to be able to stand up and stand tall and to be able to teach others how to get through. There's so much strength already that you have shown just by getting up and facing the next day after such violations have happened. And so I just want to encourage you guys to reach out, because we grow through connecting, we heal through connecting with others.
Thank you, Doc. Dr. Fletcher, your last word, and then Vespers, please. Open your mic, open your mic, open your mic. Still not yet open. Okay, there you go.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I'm saying as a church, we have a moral responsibility to be alert and responsive to abuse within the families of our congregations and our communities, and to declare that such abusive behavior is a violation of the Seventh-day Adventist Christian standards. Any indications or reports of abuse must not be minimized, but seriously considered. For church members to remain indifferent and unresponsive is to condone, perpetuate, and possibly extend family violence. And so we want to be clear that this is we have to have a no-nonsense approach when it comes to this. Nobody will be sheltered, will be protected when they are perpetrators of abuse. We will not accept that, and it must be clear, unequivocal. Whether you are a pastor, you're an elder, you're a parent, whoever you are, you will be held responsible if you are an abuser. And that is the message we want to send to everybody. And for those who are victims, we want to say, listen, the church is here for you. There are persons available, professionals. We have individuals who are caring in our church community that you can come to. You have to trust somebody. You have to find somebody to trust. Come to us, and we will endeavor to create that community of support around you so you can be helped as you journey through these very difficult and challenging experiences. For my Vesper, I decided to go to the Adventist Home, page 179, just 2 paragraphs, and then we pray and close off. It speaks to the secret of family unity. It says the cause of division and discord in families and in the church is separation from Christ. To come near to Christ is to come near to one another. The secret of true unity in the church and in the family is not diplomacy, not management, not a superhuman effort to overcome difficulties, though there will be much of this to do, but union with Christ. Picture a large circle from the edge of which many lines are running to the center. The nearer these lines approach the center, the nearer they are to one another. Thus it is in the Christian life. The closer we come to Christ, the nearer shall be to one another. We shall be to one another. God is glorified as his people unite in harmonious action. And so my challenge to us as we move forward as a Christian community, and if there are persons joining us who are not of the Seventh-day Adventist church community, I want to present to you Jesus. With Jesus in the vessel, the storm will be there, but we can smile at the storm. He will give us grace. He will give us strength to go through the challenging times that we may have. You know, Paul in Corinthians had a challenge. Theologians still discuss what the challenge is. What is it the thorn in the flesh is? Some say it's an eye problem. Some say it's some bad habit he had. We're not sure. But he prayed for God to remove the challenge, to remove the problem. But God did. He prayed 3 times, but God didn't remove it. But God said, and I want to bring this point to us. He says, my grace is sufficient for thee. And so while you go through those challenges, while you seek professional help, while you do all the necessaries to help you to make the best of life and to where you cannot erase the past, but to be able to function as you move forward in life. Christ said through Paul, speaking to Paul, he speaks to us today, my grace, God's grace is sufficient for us. And so I present to you Jesus, because in Christ we are more than victorious. Let us pray. Eternal Father, thank you for this platform this afternoon, that we were able to share, to listen to these 2 testimonials that were so heart-touching. But Lord, we know that you are still in the saving business, saving us through these difficult challenges we have, and saving us ultimately in your eternal kingdom. Continue to be with these 2 young ladies in a special way, Lord. Continue to help them as they move forward in their journey, and that they too will be able to form healthy and functional families as young ladies as they plan for their future. We pray for those who are listening via the various social media platforms. And we ask that those who may be going through their own experiences now, you will give them the strength and the guidance and the wisdom to take the necessary steps so that they can rise out of the challenge that they and problem that they find themselves in. And for those who may be listening, maybe watching, who are perpetrators, Lord, help them to stop and to stop now, realizing what they are doing is hurting others and they are hurting you. Help them to get help as well, Lord, so that they can truly be the persons you would have them to be. God, we don't know what is ahead of us, but we know who is ahead. We know that you're ahead. And so our hands are in your hands. Guide us safely into the future. And Lord, we long for the day when sin and problems and all the consequences of sin would be gone. And you have brought in the new world order, one after your own order, in the new heavens and the new earth. Oh God, we long for that day, and that hope burns in our hearts. But until then, Lord, help us to get others ready for that glorious day. Oh God, keep us faithful and true to you. In your name we pray. Amen. God bless you, everyone, and a safe week. God bless you.
Thank you, Dr. Boudou Fletcher. I would like to, sir, on behalf of the Youth Department of Kitsiltown Seventh-day Adventist Church and all the members of the panel, we would like to extend our condolences to you, sir, and your organization on the loss of 2 of your members. And we are happy to hear the good news that the other 2 officers are doing more, we say, pretty well, and we pray that God will continue to heal them in this time. So please take back our condolences to your organization, sir. We'd like to thank Dr. Lanina Mom Premier, Dr. Gary Boudou Fletcher, DSP Samantha Smith, Mrs. Tashiana Burgess Smith. We'd also like to thank for their courage as well, Andreen and Letitia, for gracing us with your presence. We're very honored to have had you on our platform, and I'm sure that your testimony would have been a kind of a motivator for many persons who have suffered and would and will be suffering abuse going forward. We pray that that doesn't happen. We thank you so much. We also want to thank all our support panelists, Dr. Lorraine Vernal, I saw, our Women's Ministries Director, um, Superintendent Dwayne Wellington, one of our sponsors, also in the forum. We'd like to thank all the medical doctors that I'm seeing in the forum in the United States of America. I've seen you quite a bit. We thank you so much. All the other members who joined us in Jamaica, Canada, London. We thank you so much for gracing us with your presence, and those watching on Facebook and YouTube. At this time, I'm going to invite Letitia. She's launching her book on Sunday, and I'm going to give her the opportunity to just tell us a bit about her launch. Letitia? Letitia? Letitia, are you there? Letitia? I'm not hearing her. However, let me see if I can, I will not do as well as Letitia, who would have done with the launch of her book. Her book will be launched on Sunday, this Sunday at Central Jamaica Conference of Seventh-day Adventist office at 3 o'clock. I don't remember the title of the book. I honestly don't remember the title of the book, which is bad on me because I really thought that I would have had her to launch it herself. But we are inviting you to support her book, and we are asking you to push her as well. I'm just sorry that she's not here to give some information. How could we reach her so we could have more information on it? So at this time, we want to thank Chrisanne Thomas, our Master Controller, Paul Beckford, and Roger, and all the technical people behind the scenes. And we're going to leave you with one final piece. Dr. Verna, good to have you. Before we go, Dr. Verna, would you want to respond to anything that was said before we go? Because you are the boss, you know. It's your portfolio.
Okay, sir. Just to say that, and it has been hinted at, education is one of the key things. And I know, and I'm in support of everything Dr. Boudou Fletcher said as it relates to the church and its stance. But there is need for accepting that there are many things that are happening because there are many situations. We may not have the statistics, but there are situations where people are uncomfortable even speaking about it. There are some persons who don't facilitate this type of discussion. They don't think it's the best thing, but the church has to help in getting persons to acknowledge that there are things that we need to do to prevent this. My sister said it. We tend to be very curative as against being preventative. So we need to empower our children, empower our young people, help the parents so we can cut down on the numbers. And there are serious challenges with certain belief systems in Jamaica, but we will just have to work at helping people to realize that certain things are not right, certain things are not godly, but we're doing it this evening. There are other persons who are doing it as well. So we continue to educate so we can help persons to, and hopefully cut down or eliminate the numbers of abuse that we will have. And I want to join everybody in commending these young ladies who made themselves vulnerable, who came and spoke out, because there are so many persons who are dying. Many times after instances like these, we have persons saying, "Oh, I wish I could, talk." But sometimes there are some of us who they'll talk to. So we just need to equip ourselves and make ourselves available.
Thank you very much. To thank Mr. Elder Christopher Thomas for the able way in which you conducted, moderated the program for us. I'm going to turn over to Master Control now for her to give us a nice little taste of what happened right throughout the season. Master Control. Before you go, how could I have forgotten to thank our two instrumentalists that did so beautifully, well with the instruments. Thank you, Mr. Semter. We enjoy that very much. Over to you, Chrisanne.
How can I say thanks for the things you have for me. Things so undeserved, yet you gave to prove your love for me. The voices of a million angels could not express my gratitude. All that I am and ever hope to be, I owe it all to thee. To God be the glory. To God be the glory. To God be the glory for the things He has done with His blood.
Delicia, thank you so much for that lovely montage. Thank you so much, Delicia. That was done by our the Secretary of the Youth Department of the church. Thank you so much. Chrisanne, when you're ready, you let us know when you're signing off so that we can have our off the air chat. So tell us when you're ready. We're still on.